Good evening, everyone. It is another special election week edition of hashtag Malkin Live. Many of you who joined me earlier in the day saw a really important interview I did with Darren Beattie, the former White House speechwriter and political theorist, on what ordinary citizens need to do to help stop the steal. And if you haven't already gone to Revolver News, Darren Beattie's very indispensable website, and read the two pieces that he's done on this, I highly recommend you go and do that now. Go and catch up on that live stream, which is now archived at YouTube and Facebook. Hello, everybody. I am so glad to see you all. Tons of people joining in. I know I'm overlapping with Tucker right now, but you can just go ahead and TiVo him and watch this live stream because I've got a great guest for you. I'll introduce him in a second, but I want to show you some video from Michigan. Today, our focus right now, tonight, is Michigan. Many of you probably saw just in the last hour, lawsuits filed by the Trump campaign in Michigan and I believe Georgia and Pennsylvania. This fight was always going to be headed to the courts. If you've been paying attention to my past live streams and columns over the last several weeks, you knew this. You were ready, right? This is nothing you didn't expect, in large part because of many of the nonprofit, non-governmental organizations on the left teaming up with Silicon Valley to inflate the mail-in ballots and absentee ballots using COVID as a ruse. COVID was the ruse to engineer this. And if you're wondering why unmarked white vans are showing up at polling places, dropping off massive numbers of ballots that all have Biden marked on them, it is because of groups like the Center for Tech and Civic Life. And I highly recommend that you have friends who are scratching their heads wondering why this is happening, that you go follow my Twitter feed right now. Of course, we're all being throttled, including, of course, and especially President Trump. Every time we expose what's going on, this is all part of the plan. But the Center for Tech and Civic Life in particular dumped $250 million at least that came from the Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan Foundation. They teamed up with Google, with the founder of eBay, Pierre Omidyar, to sprinkle all of this money, targeting especially battleground states. And I want to direct you to a spreadsheet that I posted more than a month ago. Let me just share this with you. And bear with me because this is super important to remind you of this. So many people weren't paying attention when they should have been. And you can see who it is that's responsible for all of these mystery ballots all of a sudden showing up. So let's see, I think it's this one. Here we go. These are the top recipients. These are the top recipients of Center for Tech and Civic Life money. These are the people who were training city workers to collect all of these ballots, sometimes in public parks, and using unsecured canvas bags to collect all of the ballots, throw them in there, and then have them carted off in mystery vans that disappeared and now are suddenly reappearing. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, $10 million. That, of course, that was a Clinton stronghold. Detroit, Michigan, $3.5 million. This is cut off here, but the vast majority of the rest of the top recipients of these grants were in Wisconsin and Michigan. So here's the rest of the list. I'll just read it to you. After Milwaukee, Green Bay, Madison, Racine, and Kenosha, Wisconsin, the next largest recipients were the cities of Flint, Lansing, Muskegon, Ann Arbor, Saginaw, which Trump won by less than 2% of the vote, Pontiac, Michigan, and East Lansing, Michigan. There are no coincidences. And it appears to me that the Justice Department fell down on the job. I notified a top official at the White House about this in late September. Nothing happened then. And so now we're playing catch up in the courts. And meanwhile, on the ground, we've got these incredible grassroots activists who've been the eyes and the ears trying to make sure that corruption and fraud are stopped in their tracks. And one of them is Matt Seeley. Hi, Matt. It's great to see you again.
It's so good to see you.
Yes. So just a bit of background. You are with the Michigan Conservative Coalition. Your actual title is?
Spokesman.
You are a spokesperson. You are the torchbearer for MCC. And I will never forget, I will be so incredibly indebted to you and all of the other activists there, Bill, who put together an incredible event back in February. Gosh, it seems like eons ago, doesn't it?
No.
So that was Battle Cry, Michigan. And I got to see you all at work. You are among the hardest working, most passionate conservative activists in Michigan. It's no surprise, of course, that your name and your work came up through the course of all of the COVID lockdowns, the craziness, the protests that you led that spread nationwide.
Operation Gridlock. Yeah.
Operation Gridlock, which we copied and did here in Denver as well, following you guys. You really are trailblazers. And I want you to just tell your story about what you've witnessed over the past 24 hours. I can't believe that your eyes are still open. I'm sure you haven't gotten much sleep because Wayne County, which is, I believe, is where you're a business owner. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And of course now is national news. I was going to play some of the video, but I'll let you just go ahead and narrate it, and then I'll bring the video up later. But of course, we saw people locked in, and what is going on at the processing center there?
This is just such a insane, chain of events. Last night I'm at home. I'm looking at this electoral victory that the president's lining up. He's ahead in every state. It's around 2:00 in the morning. He's got a 300,000 vote lead in Michigan. And then all of a sudden, they call Arizona. They put the brakes on this whole thing. All of the voting count stops. And I feel like all of this momentum just was taken away, and that the entire broadcast is shifted towards how Trump's going to lose this thing. It was like surreal. So at the crack of dawn, we got a group of people down to the counting center after we heard that in the middle of the night that there were ballots being delivered and no one knew where they were coming from, and things were being run through counting machines without any verification. And basically, we got a ground game over to the TCF Center in downtown Detroit, which is where all of Wayne County was being handled as far as a count was concerned for absentee and mail-in ballots. So I get there, and it's just like total chaos in the sense that there's really thousands of people everywhere, and they've got all of these tables set up kind of in a a rectangular fashion where there's a stack of ballots being put next to a person with a laptop. They scan the ballot. The ballot basically comes up on a monitor that the poll watchers can see, and they verify the ballot number, and then you can verify it on the screen. It gets passed down the table to the next person. They open the envelope, verify that the ballot's got that same number on the inside. It looks completely legitimate, right? Well, then all of a sudden, as I'm watching this, they're just bringing ballots and ballots from all of these different locations, and a lot of them were not scanning into the database. So there's this pile starting on the table. And as a poll challenger, I finally said to one of the supervisors, because you're not allowed to talk to any of the poll workers, I said to the supervisor, what's this, erroneous stack of ballots that you're accumulating here? He goes, oh, well, they're not in the database. They may be late registration voters, and we've got a manifest that was created over the weekend and into Monday, and we'll just manually check. thought that sounded reasonable. Well, they go through and guess what? Not one of these names is on there. So I'm walking around the center and now I'm noticing that on every table, there's these big plastic storage bins that have tags on them that say problem ballots. And they're all getting dumped into these bins, right? So as poll watchers and poll challengers, we want to challenge every one of the ballots. They wouldn't give us the ballot numbers, and they told us that they weren't done processing those ballots, and that when they did, then we could ask for the ballot number. Well, as I'm standing there, another worker comes over and grabs the bin and then disappears into the crowd. And about the third time that happened, I followed the person and they took it over to where the counting machines are, and they're running these ballots through the counting machines that absolutely have no traceability. They're not in the database. They're not in the late registration manifest. No one knows who these people are, and we had 134 stations like the one I just described. And out of those stations, we were supposed to be allowed to have an observer and a challenger at each one. We maybe had 50 people in the room, okay, with some attorneys. And we started putting the word out on social media, and then all of a sudden people were coming. And by the time we got to lunchtime, we had a couple hundred people ready to come into the room. And then all of a sudden they locked the doors and said, we're at capacity, no one else is coming in. And then they announced, if you guys want to go get lunch, go get lunch. So a lot of our workers left to go get refreshment in this ballroom that they provided us with, thinking that when we left the room, they'd let another Republican in to take our place, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not only did they not let them in, they didn't let the person who went to lunch back in. Meanwhile, the Democrats inside the counting room were provided with an area where they could have bottled water, coffee, donuts. They brought in Jimmy John's box lunches, so they never had to leave the room. So they knew in advance they were going to lock us out.
Yeah.
That's why they brought lunch into the room for the Democrats.
Yes. Hold on a second, because I'm going to bring up some video here of the scene. Let's see if I can play this. So just a question, because I'm going to rewind this a little bit. So who are the people here that we're looking at?
They're all Republicans trying to get into the center so
Mm-hmm.
that they can take a spot as a poll challenger or an observer, a poll watcher. And basically they've been locked out. And as more and more of them accumulated, they started chanting, "Stop the vote."
Yes.
Word had gotten out that the president had filed a motion to basically receive an injunction to stop counting so that they could get a legal team down there to start analyzing all of these erroneous ballots that had come out of nowhere.
Right. Let's just watch a little bit more of that video where they start chanting.
Oh my God! Okay, why isn't he wearing a mask right there then? Yeah, but the guy was covering the window.
Yeah. So just if people weren't able to catch that audio, who is the guy in the three-piece suit with the yellow tie? Do you know who exactly that is, or that's just some Wayne County election official?
I think it's just an official that I'm not aware of. Yeah.
Right. Now, so he was invoking COVID as an excuse to basically tell the crowd to disperse. And then one of the Republican observers is observing that one of these guards was not wearing a mask himself. By the way, these guards, are these Wayne County sheriff's deputies?
Yes.
Or these police officers? Like, who are these people?
They had Wayne County sheriffs, and they
Mhm.
also had some state police, and
Mhm.
they also had City of Detroit.
Gotcha. Okay, here we go. Okay, so they were chanting "Stop the Count." All of those videos have gone viral, And when you talk about that there were lawyers, are these party lawyers or these private individuals with say nonprofit election integrity groups?
So the Michigan GOP had some staff lawyers that were there, and they had also reached out to some other people who are volunteers to come down. And, we had lawyers being ejected. One was told he had a very big beard and he had a mask on, but they said that he was, a COVID risk and that he was taking his mask off. And it wasn't true at all. And they ejected the lawyer from the room. And then any poll challenger like myself, if we challenged too much, they would be ejected from the room. We had sheriffs escorting people out, saying that we were interrupting the vote, that we were just basically, it was unbelievable to be.
Yeah, this is insane. Now I want to show another video. I mentioned that in Wisconsin, when I was there more than a month ago, that a local grassroots conservative talk show host, Vicki McKenna, had been tipped off to ballot harvesting that was being conducted in conjunction with this nonprofit that has poured all of this money into battleground states called the Center for Tech and Civic Life. And she and her listeners had captured video of these unmarked white vans being loaded with these unsecured bags of ballots. And so, of course, it caught my eye. And again, this is, let's see. Well, Gateway Pundit did a story, and Texas Scorecard posted video of wagons rolling into, this is the same Detroit vote counting center, right? TCF?
Yes.
Okay, right. And this was early in the morning. So was this at the same time at around 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, do you think?
4 o'clock in the morning, just magically 35,000 ballots arrived, and no one could explain where they came from or why. And the one person who got a shot of this van, it had an out-of-state license plate, and everyone just acted like it was business as usual.
It's just stunning.
And Eric Trump got a hold of this, and thank God for him, he retweeted this, and it's gone viral.
Yes, and it's business as usual in a third world banana republic.
What is going on? I mean, it's just
like
I said, I went to bed and he had a 300,000 vote lead. We were told Michigan had 5.2 million votes total that needed to be counted, right?
Yes.
They got the 5.2 million votes, and Trump was still winning, and so was John James. And all of a sudden, they moved the goal line and said, "Oh, it's 5.6 million votes."
Yeah.
And here we are. Now he's down 120,000 votes.
Yeah. Let me play some of this video for people if they haven't seen it. Okay, here we go. White unmarked van. Nothing to see here.
Looks
Move
like
along.
One of those lock boxes. I wish I could tell.
They've got the wagons. They got it. Everything outfitted here. Let's see. Carting him in.
Where does that come from so late at night?
And there we go. Voila! Out of thin air. Right, Matt?
It's so heartbreaking to see that we have done such an amazing job in Michigan to deliver the president, the state, and that last night he had a 300,000 vote real lead, and how this was manufactured. This loss is being manufactured, and we all feel so powerless because all of the mechanisms that our democracy has in place for us to assure a fair result are being bypassed and suppressed.
Right. Now, the work of the poll observers is what's happening now. I mean, you have hundreds, if not thousands, of people across Michigan who've been doing this work. What's the status of that? Are you still going? Yeah.
That's such a great question because every state's got its own election laws, and in Michigan, what happens is that if we can stop the vote with an injunction before they call it counted, okay, then we're allowed to go into every one of those precincts and manually look at every ballot, see who's somebody's dead grandmother, see who's somebody who's a made up person, 20 people living at the same address, all of the things that we all know happen. And we're allowed to peel back the layers of the onion and take our time to do that, very similar to what happened in 2000 in Miami-Dade with the hanging chads. But if they are able to say tonight that they finished the count, once those precinct boxes have all the ballots loaded in them and they're sealed, then we have to go into recount mode. And in Michigan, the way a recount works is when that seal's broken, when they go into that box, and it's like a big metal strong box, when they open it up, they pull out the logbook, and the logbook will say there's 150 ballots for this precinct. Then you pull out all the actual ballots and you just count them out. Well, if it says there's 150 in there, but there's 300, if it's not in balance, if the log doesn't match the ballots, it all goes back into the box and it gets sealed, and the vote from election night is where it stands. So the cheating is allowed to stand. You just can't cheat more on a recount. So they're going to just make sure that all of the precincts that they've done bad things in are out of balance, so everything just gets locked back up and no one can ever examine it.
Right. And it's so key to have that scrutiny and that transparency. And so
I was part of the recount effort in 2016. Jill Stein did the Republican Party an amazing service by asking for that recount. I know she was trying to help Hillary Clinton, but it became very apparent to us that, it wasn't a matter of whether or not there was cheating. They just didn't cheat enough. Okay? And as a result, when the recount happened, Trump actually gained votes. But, the person you're cheating for, you got to do it all on election night and get that sealed into those boxes. And then they make sure that it's one or two ballots off. And now it's not a balanced, reconciled precinct with the logbook and the actual physical ballots. And it just stays in the box. We can't do anything about it.
Right. I know that this has been such a hard, long fought battle for Michigan grassroots conservative activists. And at this point, it's really hard to keep your spirits up, and President Trump is fighting hard. We now have activists in other cities in battleground states that are turning out for rallies tonight. And I talked about this with your other leaders with the Michigan Conservative Coalition. You are doing hand-to-hand combat and are needed doing the job that you're doing as watchdogs at these polling centers. And at the same time, there also needs to be these public shows of support for Trump, because the narrative has already, it's fixed. It was fixed before this. And you have every mainstream media outlet helping and enabling the false narrative that Biden was ahead, that Biden is the presumptive winner here, and that anything Trump is doing to challenge all of this fraud is tantamount to a so-called coup. What's the feeling on the ground among other of your members of the Michigan Conservative Coalition in what we can do to smash that narrative and get people to see what's going on here and what's been going on?
So I have to tell you that from the standpoint of last night, we went into, the beginning of the broadcast, and they had all said that the polls showed that it should be a blowout night for Joe Biden. Now, all of the Trump people always thought that was fake news, because that's what happened in 2016. So as the night started unfolding and the counts started coming in, and it became apparent that the president was going to basically hit every target state that he had hit last time and win those states again, that's when Arizona was prematurely called. And even Brett Baer, God bless him, said, why are we calling Arizona with 73% of the vote in? And here's Texas, where the president has a commanding lead, and you guys will not call Texas, know? And we still haven't heard, Georgia or North Carolina or any of them. And then at that point, just about the time Texas was called, and Arizona had been called, that's when the whole narrative changed that Joe Biden was going to have this, magical victory now that they went to the paper trail from the mail-in ballots and the absentee ballots. And I thought to myself at the time, okay, this is brilliant. They count all the walk-up votes that they know are Republican. They find out what the lead is. And now they say, okay, now we're going to count all of the ballots that are mailed in and absentee, and we can manufacture a win in every state because we know how many votes we need to win.
Yes. Yes.
Not one state gave us a count at the end of the night as to how many ballots they had. Now, what makes amazing irony to me in many ways is the same party that's always screaming being disenfranchised at the voting booth. You think about it from this standpoint, Michelle. You've got all of the walk-up votes. The machines tabulate how many people voted for the whole state. You know immediately when the polls close, Michigan had, let's say, just 3 million votes at walk-up voting. All of that time that all those paper ballots were sitting, waiting to be opened and counted, they should have had a total, right? We should have known the second the polls closed that Michigan's going to have 5.2 million ballots when this is all over with. Yeah. None of those states would give a grand total because they need a moving target to manufacture wins.
Yeah, that's right. Florida did not have any trouble counting by election night.
Florida's got close to 22 million people.
Exactly.
And it's an elderly population. They have more absentee voters there than any other state. Mm-hmm. And yet they delivered their count and were basically called by 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
And then here you got Michigan, who's got 10 million people. And here we are.
Yeah. And North Carolina, which is not going to get around to counting more ballots until November 12th, Matt.
It's just unbelievable. I just, my heart breaks right now.
I agree with you, but I hope it inflames people is what I'm hoping. And many of us have warned about this kind of engineered chaos for a long time. And it speaks to the ruthlessness with which the left conducts its business. By any means necessary is, the official slogan of many of their most extremist groups, but that is the center of the left, and they're doing it. And in a way, I don't know if you agree with me on this, but it's a sort of a perverse backhanded compliment. They're always united behind this singular goal of obstructionism and destructionism, for that matter. And they're all concentrated. I mean, they have the academic concept of intersectionality. Whatever their disparate interests are, they're all headed in the same direction with this one goal, and they all unite. Oh, if only it were so among all the different factions of the right. I mean, here, President Trump, for the last 4 years, has had to combat not only the forces of the left, but the never-Trump conservative, so-called conservative establishment Republicans who are on the same side as the left.
Well, look at it from this standpoint. The president of the United States presides over a $6 to $7 trillion annual budget. Okay. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is the most powerful person in the world. That is the largest amount of money to be in control of and divvy up and to spend. And we are not at war. This is the most peaceful the world has been in my entire lifetime. He's been dialing everything back. So the industrial military complex is not happy with this guy. Mm-hmm. He's going after the pharmaceutical companies and dialing that back. They're not happy with this guy. The Middle East is becoming irrelevant to the oil industry because we're a net producer and we've got all of this people going to work creating energy for our country. So they're not happy with this guy. And you go down the list of all of the people, and obviously China is a huge factor in this as well. All of these people that are used to getting their slice of the pie are not getting that now because he's actually doing the right thing. And he's looking out for people like you and I.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And that's why all of these various forces are allied with each other. I mean, President Trump poses a bigger threat, existential threat to all of these various forces than any other political figure in American history. And of course, we have to make sure to mention big tech and Silicon Valley in all of that. by some miracle, I'm still on many of these platforms, and there are thousands of people who watched us on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter tonight. If people want more information, they can still follow you on your own Facebook page, which is at Matt Seeley. Is that right?
Yeah.
And of course, the Michigan Conservative Coalition, one of the most powerful and effective grassroots organizations in America. I wasn't even paid to say that. And you mentioned also that you're part of this great Facebook group called 100% Fed Up, and I'm all about that. Thank you so much for your time, and make sure to give us any updates, and be safe and be well and get some rest.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I appreciate you giving us this platform. It's so important that people understand what's going on and what the truth is.
Amen. Amen. We will get the truth out, and we will win one way or the other. So thank you so much, Matt. Take care.
Good night.
God bless. All right, guys. So that was Matt Seeley. I hope that was instructive for you. There are so many related stories, and I've got some background information from Michigan Conservative Coalition about everything that's been going on there. And one thing is related to the so-called training of poll workers and poll watchers. There's another video that I want to share with you that came from late October. Big League Politics posted, and it was shocking. I'm going to read this article to you, but I'm going to bring it up at the same time. Those of you who've hung on, this is important backdrop, because you all know that COVID was the gift for the left and the Democrats to rig this election. That was the ruse that allowed them to intervene. Silicon Valley, the public health industrial complex, all of these left-wing nonprofit groups, in order to harvest all of these ballots that are now suddenly appearing seemingly out of nowhere. And I'm going to keep repeating this until I'm red and blue and purple in the face, because I'm frustrated with people who are scratching their heads wondering how this all happened when it happened in front of our eyes and unfolded. I mean, it wasn't even hidden. It was all in public view. The maps that I shared with people on Sovereign Nation on Newsmax a month ago, showing where all of the money from Mark Zuckerberg had been poured into juicing up mail-in and absentee ballots in Democrat strongholds, as well as swing cities and counties and jurisdictions where, you know, the smallest number of these ballots, of course, is making a huge difference. So let's go over this article, because, you know, all of a sudden people are discovering all of the reporting that I've done over the past couple of months, but there are others who were flagging this as well. So this is Big League Politics, Shane Trejo, as I mentioned. Poll workers laugh over how COVID-19 social distancing rules will stop poll challengers. Okay, so Shane got this scoop. A Detroit elections trainer explained to poll workers who were being trained how they could use COVID social distancing protocols to neutralize poll challengers. That's important because they can come behind your table, but if you don't have 6 feet, they can't come back there. Any questions, the instructor said? So if they're 6 feet back, they can't actually see, a trainee interjected. So these are city workers who are being instructed on how to block poll challengers. Of course, this is liberal Detroit, liberal Wayne County. So these are Democrat city officials training liberal trainees to block Republican poll challengers. And this was several weeks ago that this was reported, and the video was leaked. And then, of course, we have to from this afternoon, the video of those poll workers being blocked and obstructed. It just didn't come out of nowhere. Let's watch this video. All right, it says the following is actual audio taken during a poll worker training seminar in Detroit in October of 2020. And there's a disclaimer that says that Big League Politics has not tampered with, altered, or changed the audio in any way. The only edit that was made was to add subtitles.
That's important because they can come behind your table. But if you don't have 6 feet, they can't come back there. They cannot wear anything that signifies who they work for. It has to be on their card. So they can't walk in with a party or anything on, just like you can on your mask, they can't either. Any questions?
By the way, before we get to the question from the trainee, of course, we have seen reports from all across the country of polling centers in liberal cities that had justice for George Floyd and other indications of liberal and Democrat affiliations. No problem with those. But of course, anyone that walks in with a MAGA hat or anything red is immediately turned away, chastised, or told to take off their apparel or turn it inside out.
60 back was a really good vision. Big neck, please.
Exactly. Yes, they got really good vision. Or they brought their binoculars.
Ha ha ha. All laughing that 6 feet COVID rules will help prevent the poll challengers from seeing what's actually happening and from being able to scrutinize the ballots.
6 feet. That's the rule, right? And you are entitled to your 6 feet.
And you are entitled to your 6 feet. This is how obstruction, resistance, and delay is happening. And thank goodness for the poll worker trainee who captured that, because now that we have lawsuits going on, it's exactly that kind of revelation that's going to help bolster the case for deliberate, engineered fraud and obstruction of election integrity. So let's see. I'm going to look at some of the comments here. I'm missing a lot. I don't have any mods. I don't have any moderators or whatnot. So a lot of people are commenting on some of the earlier news about, hundreds of thousands, tens and tens and tens of thousands of ballots being dumped onto these centers that have 98, 99, 100% votes for Biden. And of course, just to go back to the Center for Tech and Civic Life, if you understand that these were massive amounts of ballots that were harvested and collected by people who were subsidized by Mark Zuckerberg and Google and other left-wing anti-Trump groups, then of course it's no mystery. There's no mysteries here. There's no mysteries. And I wish that the right had been better prepared. For Sovereign Nation, I'll be talking to one of the lead GOP attorneys who's on the ground over this. But I do want to repeat again that if you feel frustrated, if you want to go out there, do something for your president, that in a number of the battleground states, there are rallies and demonstrations and stop the steal events that are being held. I think tonight I retweeted one that's going on in Nevada. Somebody in comments just told me that his or her son was at the one in Arizona. Let's see, so 7 o'clock, I think in an hour or right now, we've got one happening in Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas tonight. Tomorrow, there'll be an event for voter integrity in Harrisburg at the state capitol at noon. And there'll be another one at 1 p.m. in Washington, D.C. With several leading grassroots figures. And I'll keep retweeting those out and sharing information on my Twitter account, although, as many of you know, anything election related is getting throttled. Our president has had close to a dozen of his own tweets that have been blocked, throttled, shadow banned, screened, and labeled by Twitter. These people are out for blood. And like I said in my interview with Matt, by any means necessary. And so we have to show the same amount of fight that our president has shown. Remarkable push in the last 48 to 72 hours of the campaign. Let's see, I'm getting a message right now on more of the rallies that are being held. And I'm going to share this with you right now because it's going to be my closing comment for you. And then I'll catch up with you again tomorrow. Let's see, here we go. This is Jenny Beth Martin, one of the leading grassroots conservatives. She is posting here that Protect the Vote protests are now scheduled in Georgia, targeting Georgia. All of these are targeting the battleground states and the states where President Trump is filing lawsuits. So tomorrow in Georgia, downtown Atlanta at the Centennial Olympic Park at noon, Arizona, of course, the one tonight at the Arizona State Capitol, and another one tomorrow at the Phoenix City Hall, 9 a.m. In Michigan, 9 a.m. at the TCF Center. That's the same center that I just discussed with Matt Seeley of Michigan Conservative Coalition, where all of the shenanigans are happening in Wayne County. And in Pennsylvania, at the Pennsylvania Convention Center, tomorrow at 9 a.m. And you can find out more about the Protect the Vote rallies at teapartypatriots.org. Keep the faith, everybody. Keep the faith and keep up your energy. We have a high energy president who's waging a high energy fight to stop the steal. And we have to do everything we can to help in that effort. Make sure you go to Revolver News and read Darren Beatty's articles on Stop the Steal and what citizens need to do. This is not over. And the left is going to fight as hard as it can to regain power. And we have to fight even harder to make sure they do not reclaim it. God bless you all. Take care.